Good morning. Welcome to Hope, Faith, and Joy Daily Devotion with me, Pastor Amanda. Today we are looking at Exodus 21. And what we have discovered in this, what we will discover in this, is it's an extension of the Ten Commandments. And it's like adding clarifying points to what was going on. And one thing to remember about this is going to come for the next couple of chapters. We're going to see an extension of the Ten Commandments. And it's a reminder to us that because this group of people, this community of faith, has set itself apart to love the Lord their God with all their heart and soul and mind, that they are to set an example of how to live in a culture, community world that thinks and behaves very differently than they do. And I think this is important for us, like as Christians today, is remembering that that's really what our faith communities are supposed to be. These a community of people who set themselves apart, their lives apart, to live it differently than the world around them lives. And so sometimes it takes a little extra clarification. It takes a little extra communication to discern what that looks like for this community. And so that's what we're looking at today, is how the Hebrew people, how their community looks different than the rest of the world that they live in. And so we'll get into some interesting subjects along the way. So the first thing it talks about is so two things that make it very important is it's a Hebrew slave. So, first of all, slavery in the Old Testament is nothing like the atrocity that the Americans know about, as in the transatlantic slave trade. This is not to do with the way people in Africa were treated during the apartheid. This is something very different. And yes, there were some harsh punishments, yes, but not at this evil level that was experienced in our history. So first of all, so slavery is very different. It was a way that people could make money, because it was just like saying, I'm going to be your farmhand, I'm going to be your kitchen maid, I'm going to be your house cleaner. But those roles were all connected into this word slave. And yes, then that means the person who pays them was the one who they were indebted to. They needed that person to earn that money. So there's that slave kind of symbolizes a relationship that was there, a dependent relationship that was there. So the next part of it is talking about a Hebrew slave. So it means it's one of our own. This is one of our own people who has had to put themselves out into this position to where they need to depend on another Israelite, another Hebrew person to make an income and everything. And what we find out is that they are to work for 6 years and hopefully getting out of whatever debt they are in or whatever need they are in. And on the seventh year, they will be set free without debt. So there you go. So it's not a long-term contract. It's actually 6 years of working, and in the seventh year, they'll be set free from their debt. And it's kind of interesting, too. What happens here is it realizes that relationships can form. And so it goes in to say, if this person comes into slavery single, they're going to go out single. If they come in married and have kids, they will leave with their wife and children. However, if they should form a relationship with somebody within that, if they should form a relationship, though during their time period, the children and the woman actually belong to the master, their owner. And so then the slave has the opportunity to say, well, in order to keep my family, I will work for this master for the rest of my life. And he'll get a symbol of the thingy in his ear. It's a pierce in his ear with an owl, AWL. And so then they will be forever connected. Freedom will not be part of it, but this person will be able to keep their family, and they will have loyalty to this household. Then there is, of course, some stuff about, again, what happens if a daughter is sold into slavery, how she should be treated, and how somebody, if they become a wife, how they should be treated. And remember, this is important too, because women were considered property. But what's good in this is that they recognize their value, and they're considered vulnerable and need to not be mistreated. So there's this awareness. So the world at that time thought of women as commodities, but the Hebrew people are going to say, but we still need to treat them. And they have a long ways to go. Don't get me wrong. They got a long ways to go. But they're at least making steps here in how we protect this group of people. Next, we have dealing with the violence that happens at times. And we find if anybody meditates murder, if it's intentional, if it's thought about, if it's planned, you'll be stoned. However, there's this awareness that, sometimes it's self-protection. Sometimes it just happens, and things like that. And so if it was not meditated, there will be a safe place for this person to go to, because there's a recognition that people are going to feel anger and revenge. And so there's a way to get this person away to be protected into those circumstances. Again, if somebody is kidnapped, whoever does that will be put to death. We then have some things going on about how to treat mother and father, recognizing that intergenerations don't always agree on how things should be done or run, but there's still this respect that needs to happen. Even if you don't want to do it the way your parents did it, you can still respect them in the process. Again, we see how people are to act in court. So how the justice system should be run in order to be the best that it can be during these times. How abuse shall be considered and dealt with. If somebody's killed, then the person who did it is killed, excuse me. If the person's just injured, they have to pay damages. It's all that kind of information. And then it also goes on to, what do you do when your livestock maybe gets damaged? Because this is their livelihood, is their livestock. And so of course we have some more rules about what would happen if somebody else caused injury to an animal, and how are they going to deal with that. So there's just a lot of interesting information in here. And this is also one of the places where we discover that if somebody is hurt in a way that causes damage to their body, they will immediately be released from their slavery, their debt that they are in, because to make up for the harm that has been caused them. And so we find out that in verse 23, if any harm follows, then you shall give life for life, or eye for eye, tooth for tooth, hand for hand, foot for foot, burn for burn, wound for wound, stripe for stripe. Now, we've misused this for many, 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 many years. And it's not that you get to go poke somebody else's eye out. It doesn't mean you get to go pull somebody's tooth. But that person has to make reprimands, and it's going to be big. So if you're in slavery and say your tooth got knocked out, according to this, you then have your freedom. And so so it's not that they went and then took their tooth and then were stuck in slavery, but there was some kind of reprimand. There had to be some kind of reciprocity in here. And what we really get out of this is how we need to be just treating each other on a normal basis. We need to recognize that there are consequences with all of our actions. And we need to think about that others are harmed in the process of us just living our lives. And how do we start to have this ability to be resilient in the midst of what happens just in the day-to-day things? I mean, bad stuff's gonna happen. It's gonna happen, but how we deal with it sets us apart as a community. So the Israelite people are setting themselves up. So like, we're not going to just kill everybody because we're mad. We're going to say there's guidelines of when death is an appropriate punishment. And of course, they've got a long ways to grow, because by the time we get to Jesus, like, no, that's not even on the table anymore. So we see that there's a progress, but they are making efforts to say that they are different by the way their community lives out its life. And that's, I think, a good question to ask your own faith community. How are we living ourselves out differently than the way the world is? What sets us apart and actually makes us really loving Christians? And so how do we come together in a way that glorifies God, glorifies Jesus, lives into the power of the Holy Spirit by what we're doing together? And maybe what kind of guidelines do we need to have out there for our community to do that? So right here, that's the beginning of our guidelines. We'll look at a few more in the next coming days. So thanks for joining me today, Pastor Amanda, with Hope, Faith, and Joy Daily Devotion.